In the far future, in a galaxy full of shimmering worlds and silent moons, there was a planet named Erindra. It was a beautiful world made of light and crystal, where tall, shining beings called the Valari lived in peace. Their cities floated above glowing lakes, and their towers touched the clouds. To them, knowledge was life, and emotion was something they studied, not something they felt deeply. Among the Valari was a young scholar named Lysera. Her crystal body gleamed in shades of silver blue, and her mind burned with endless curiosity. While others studied science or energy, Lysera loved myths, stories about ancient beings called humans. The humans, according to old archives, were small creatures of flesh and bone who lived thousands of years ago. They were said to be wild, emotional, and full of courage. Some old texts even claimed that humans once fought against great empires, protecting weak worlds from destruction. But most Valari believed those tales were only fables, created to explain courage, not record history. Lysera's teachers would laugh softly whenever she mentioned humans. "Ah, the warriors of Sol again," one of them said kindly. "A fine story for children, Lysera. But remember, myths are not history." Yet Lysera could not stop wondering. If humans were only myths, why did their records exist in the deep archives? Why did ancient ships bear marks that no Valari language could read? And why did she sometimes dream of voices shouting in strange tongues, of faces full of emotion and fire? Every night Lysera worked in the grand library of Erindra, searching through dusty data cubes. The hall was silent except for the hum of the crystal walls. She studied old transmissions, fragments of human speech broken and unclear. One voice echoed again and again. "This is Captain Elias Kane." Holding the line. "Humanity endures." The words stirred something inside her. They were not calm, not logical. They were filled with feeling. A strange thing for a Valari, but Lysera wanted to understand it. One day, while exploring a desert outside the great city of Vanis, Lysera discovered something extraordinary. The sandstorm had uncovered an ancient ruin. The metal beneath the sand looked old, older than anything Valari engineers had ever built. It was made of dull gray steel, not shining crystal. The markings were rough and simple. She activated her scanner. "Unknown alloy," the device reported. Strange symbols were carved along the side of the metal door. They were not Valari runes. Her heart, though she didn't truly understand what a heart meant, began to glow brighter within her crystal chest. She traced the letters with one delicate hand. "English," she whispered. The ancient human language she had only seen in archives. The ruin was real. The humans were real. She entered the dark corridor slowly, her light crystals casting a pale blue glow. The air smelled of dust and age. Her steps echoed softly. Deep inside, she found a sealed chamber, and there, surrounded by silent machines, stood a glass pod. Inside it was a figure, not Valari, not any known species. It was a being of flesh, pale and scarred, wearing a torn uniform with a symbol she recognized from the archives, a blue circle with a bright golden star. The insignia of the Terran Defense Command. Lysera froze. Her voice trembled. "A human..." The being inside was still, but small flickers of light pulsed from the pod's controls. The stasis field was still active. For thousands of years, this human had been sleeping. She touched the glass carefully. The man's face looked peaceful but worn, as if he had lived through endless battles before finding rest. A faint heartbeat signal appeared on her scanner. He was alive. Lysera's hands shook. This cannot be." "You are a myth." But deep down she knew the truth. The myths were real. The human race had existed, and one of them was right here before her. Lysera immediately contacted the Council of Scholars in Vanis. When they arrived, the great hall filled with glowing figures. They surrounded the pod, analyzing it with quiet precision. Their expressions were calm, but their voices were cold. "This technology is primitive," said one elder. "It must be destroyed before it spreads contamination," said another. Lysera stepped forward quickly. "No, you can't destroy him. This is a living being, a real human." The council looked at her, their crystalline faces unreadable. "Lysera," said Elder Valen, "you are a bright scholar, but you have allowed myths to blind your judgment. This creature belongs to the past, if it ever truly lived, but he does live." She said firmly, "Look, his vitals are stable. His heart beats still. The archive said humans were protectors, not monsters. We owe it to history to understand him." The elders whispered among themselves. Finally, Valen sighed. Very well. You may study it, but do not activate it. Knowledge is one thing, chaos another. Do not let the past rise again. Lysera bowed, though frustration burned in her core. She knew what she had to do. That night, alone in her laboratory, Lysera studied the pod in silence. Outside, the twin moons of Arindra cast silver light through the crystal walls. She placed her hands on the controls, reading the alien script carefully. The words were faint but understandable. Stasis active. Life support nominal. Release protocol. Lockedly, Sarah hesitated. If she unlocked it, she could be punished, even exiled. But she looked again at the man's face behind the glass. He didn't look dangerous. He looked tired. She wondered what kind of world he had come from, what battles he had fought. And then she whispered softly, "If the stories were true, you fought for others, didn't you? Then let me return the favor." She pressed the release code. At first, nothing happened. Then a soft hiss filled the room. The lights on the pod began to flicker. The glass grew misty with condensation. Lysera stepped back as the locks opened with a deep mechanical sound. The man's eyes moved beneath closed lids. His chest rose sharply as if taking the first breath in 1,000 years. The pod opened. A blast of cold air filled the room. The man coughed weakly, his body trembling. His eyes opened, deep green, bright even in the dim light. He looked around wildly, confused and afraid. His gaze landed on Lysera. For a moment, neither moved. He saw a glowing being made of light and crystal, standing before him in silence. She saw a living human, a creature of myth, breathing and real. Lysera took a small step forward and spoke softly. "Do not fear. You are safe." The man tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Where am I?" His accent matched the recordings perfectly. Lysera's eyes widened. "You are on Arindra. You've been asleep for I don't know how long," he blinked, still trying to process. "Arindra. Never heard of it. What happened to Earth?" Lysera didn't answer immediately. She didn't know how to tell him that Earth was only a legend now, a lost world no one had seen for thousands of years. Instead, she said gently, "You should rest. You've been through a long journey." He stared at her glowing form. "You're not human," Lysera smiled faintly. "No, but I've been waiting to meet one." The man looked down, his expression thoughtful. "Name's Elias Kane, Captain, Terran Defense Command. Or at least I was." Lysera's light flickered brighter. "Elias Kane," she repeated softly. "Then the legends spoke true." He frowned. "Legends?" She nodded slowly. "You were myths to us, stories. Heroes that time forgot." Elias let out a quiet breath, half a laugh, half disbelief. "Well, I guess I'm the ghost of your bedtime stories, then." Lysera smiled, a rare, bright smile for a Valari. "No, you're proof they were true." Outside, the wind howled over the desert sands. Inside, under the quiet hum of ancient machines, two beings, one of crystal and one of flesh, stood facing each other. In that silent moment, history began to wake again. The age of humans was not over. It had only been sleeping. The next morning, the twin suns of Arindra rose above the silver dunes. Their light entered the glass walls of Lysera's lab, filling the room with soft blue reflections. The human, Elias Kane, sat on the edge of a bed that had been built for someone much larger. Lysera moved quietly around the room, checking readings on her devices. The air shimmered faintly with soft energy. She spoke gently, careful not to startle him. "You are recovering well. Your body is stronger than I expected. Human biology is impressive." Elias gave a small smile. His voice was rough but steady. "I'm still trying to believe I'm not dreaming. Last thing I remember was a battle near the moon, then silence." He looked around the crystalline walls. "Now I wake up in a world that glows. What year is it?" Lysera hesitated. "We don't measure time the same way you did, but it has been thousands of your years since your people disappeared." The words hit him like a weight. He looked down at his hands, scarred, human, and shaking slightly. "Thousands," he whispered. "Then everyone I knew? Everything is gone." Lysera's glowing eyes softened. "I am sorry. I know loss is something your kind felt deeply." Elias gave a tired chuckle. "Yeah, that's one way to say it." He stared at the light panels above. "Guess I'm the last one then." The last human. Lysera wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. The Valari were logical beings. Emotions were studied, not shared. But something about this human stirred something new in her, a strange warmth she couldn't name. "You are not alone," she said quietly. "You are here, and I will help you understand this world." Elias looked at her, his expression calm but curious. "You believe in the stories, don't you?" "About humans," Lysera nodded. "Yes, since I was young I read every record I could find. My teachers said you were myths, too brave, too emotional, too unpredictable to be real. But when I look at you, I see those stories come to life." He smiled faintly. "Unpredictable, huh? Yeah, that sounds about right." Over the next few days, Lysera helped Elias regain his strength. She brought him food that her people used, glowing energy cubes that restored life force. He didn't enjoy the taste much, but it kept him alive. He tried to adapt to the world around him. Everything was new. The floating buildings, the silent communication between the Valari, the soft hum of the energy that flowed through every structure. To him, it all felt too perfect, too quiet. "Your world doesn't have much noise," he said one day while standing on the balcony. "No engines, no laughter, no shouting. It's peaceful, but kind of lonely." Lysera tilted her head. "Noise is not valued among us. Silence brings harmony." "Maybe," Elias replied. "But silence can also mean fear. Or emptiness." Lysera looked at him carefully. "You think we are afraid?" He shrugged. "Maybe not afraid like humans were, but maybe afraid of feeling. Of risk." The words stayed with her long after he spoke them. When the Council of Scholars learned that Elias was awake, they summoned Lysera immediately. She entered the grand hall where tall crystal beings surrounded her. Their lights flickered in calm patterns. Elder Valen spoke first. "You have awakened the being against our orders." Lysera bowed. "Yes, Elder, but he is not dangerous. He is intelligent and cooperative." Valen's light dimmed slightly. "That may be true. But humans were said to bring conflict wherever they went. Their wars destroyed worlds." Lysera stood firm. "Their courage also saved them. Our records show that without them, many species would have perished. They were not perfect, but they were powerful in spirit." Another elder spoke, his tone cool. "Spirit does not build civilizations." "Discipline does," Lysera met his gaze. "Without spirit, civilizations fall into silence." The council murmured among themselves. After a moment, Valen said, "We will observe this human. If he causes no harm, we will allow your study to continue. But remember, Lysera, curiosity can be dangerous." Lysera nodded respectfully. "I understand." When she returned to the lab, Elias was examining a crystal table. "Those big glowing people didn't look too happy," he said. Lysera smiled faintly. "You could say that. So they think I'm dangerous?" "They think all humans were." Elias laughed softly. "Not wrong, maybe. We caused plenty of trouble back in the day, but we also saved a few worlds along the way." Lysera walked closer. "That's what I believe." "Tell me, Elias, what were humans really like?" He looked thoughtful for a moment, then leaned back against the wall. "Humans were messy," he said finally. "We fought too much, we argued too much, and sometimes we forgot what mattered. But when things got bad, when someone needed help, we stood up. No matter the odds." He looked at his hands again. "We weren't the strongest or the smartest, but we never gave up. That's what made us human." Lysera listened quietly, fascinated. His words carried emotion, something her people had almost forgotten. She felt it inside her like a spark trying to grow. "You sound proud of that," she said. He smiled. "Yeah. Even with all our mistakes, I am." That night, as Lysera recorded her notes, she felt uneasy. Her scanners picked up strange signals near the desert ruins where she had found Elias. It was faint but not natural. Some kind of energy movement, a pattern not from Irindra. She sent a drone to investigate, but it didn't return. Her lights dimmed slightly in concern. When she told Elias the next morning, he frowned. "You think it's connected to my pod?" "Possibly. The readings came from that area. I fear something else might have survived there." Elias stood up immediately. "Then we should check it out." Lysera blinked in surprise. "It could be dangerous," he gave a small grin. "Dangerous? That's kind of my specialty." She almost protested, but the determination in his eyes stopped her. There was something commanding about the way he said it. The tone of a soldier who had faced danger before. The journey to the desert took half a day. Lysera guided her glider across the dunes while Elias sat beside her, holding on tightly. The air was dry and hot, but the skies were beautiful. a sea of silver clouds and pale suns. When they reached the ruins, Lysra activated her scanner again. The strange energy signature was stronger now. "It's beneath us," she said quietly. They descended into the old corridor. The walls shook slightly with low vibrations. Elias gripped a metal rod like a weapon, ready for anything. Deep in the chamber, they found another pod, but this one was shattered. The inside was empty and the walls were scorched as if something had escaped. Lysra's voice was tense. "This is not like your pod. The energy is unstable." Elias crouched beside it, examining the marks. "This isn't human tech. It's something else. Something that used your planet's energy to survive." Before she could respond, a low hum filled the air. The walls glowed red, and strange shapes appeared in the dust. Machines, small and insect-like, crawling out from cracks in the floor. Their bodies shimmered with dark energy. Elias's instincts kicked in. "Get back!" he shouted, grabbing Lysra's arm. One of the machines fired a bolt of light that hit the wall beside them. Lysra's crystal skin flashed in shock. They're self-repairing drones. From before the Great Silence, Elias swung the metal rod at one drone, smashing it into pieces. "Then they're not friendly." Lysra raised her hands, releasing a burst of energy that melted two more. But more kept coming. The corridor filled with smoke and sparks. Elias covered her. "Move, go!" They ran out of the ruin and reached the glider, breathing hard. Behind them, the ground cracked and dark energy rose like a storm. As they flew away, Lysra looked back at the collapsing sands. What were those things? Elias stared into the distance. Old weapons. Maybe leftovers from the war that ended humanity. If they're waking up... He paused, his voice heavy. Then something worse might be coming. Lysra turned toward him, her light dimmed with worry. "Then we must prepare." Elias nodded slowly. His expression was serious now. "You said your people don't fight anymore. That's going to have to change." Lysra's eyes met his. "And you will teach us?" He gave a small smile. "If humans were myths, then it's time those myths came back to life." The glider disappeared into the glowing horizon as the desert storm rose behind them. For the first time in centuries, Erindra would soon remember what it meant to fight, and to hope. The desert winds howled over the endless dunes of Erindra. The glowing sand sparkled under twin suns as Lysra's glider sped toward the capital. Inside, silence filled the air. Elias Kane sat beside her, his jaw tight and his eyes fixed on the horizon. Neither spoke for a long time. The memory of the strange machine still burned in their minds. The red light, the screeching metal, the sudden attack. Finally, Lysra broke the silence. "Those drones, they were not from your time, were they?" Elias shook his head. "No, human drones didn't look like that. These were something else. Something worse." Lysra's hands glowed faintly as she steered. "They must have been buried since the Great Silence. The energy patterns match nothing in our records." Elias leaned back, sighing. "Whatever they weren't friendly. And if those things are waking up, your people need to be ready." Lysra turned to him. "You mean, ready to fight?" He nodded. "Yes." Her voice grew quiet. "The Volari haven't fought for over 2,000 cycles. We don't even have soldiers anymore. Our guardians are thinkers, not warriors." Elias gave a small, determined smile. "Then it's time to remember how to be both." When they reached the shining city of Vanis, the sky was beginning to darken. Towering crystal spires glowed softly, reflecting the evening light. The streets were silent, filled with the hum of peaceful machines. As they landed, Lysra quickly sent a message to the Council of Scholars, warning them of the strange drones. Within hours, the Great Hall was filled with Volari leaders. Their glowing forms shimmered in calm colors, but their eyes were uncertain. Elder Valen spoke first, his tone controlled. "You say the machines attacked you near the ruins?" Lysra bowed slightly. "Yes, Elder. They were ancient constructs powered by unknown energy. They were aggressive and coordinated." Valen turned to Elias. "And you, human, you fought them?" Elias nodded. "Yeah, not the first time I faced something that wanted me dead." Some of the elders looked uncomfortable at his blunt words. Valen's light dimmed slightly. "We appreciate your honesty. But fighting is not our way." Elias stepped forward. "Then you need to change your way, and fast. Those things won't stop with one attack. They were scouts. Something bigger is out there." The council murmured among themselves, uneasy. One elder said softly, You speak as if you've seen this before. I have, Elias replied. His voice was calm but strong. Back in my time, we faced the same kind of enemy. Machines that learned, adapted, spread like fire. We called them the Swarm. They wiped out entire colonies before we stopped them. Lysera's eyes widened. Then it's happening again? Maybe, Elias said. Maybe it never stopped. After the meeting, Lysera followed Elias outside into the open courtyard. The night sky was full of bright stars and endless and cold. Do you think they will listen? She asked quietly. Elias looked up at the stars. They'll listen when the danger reaches their door. It always happens that way. Lysera turned to him. You really believe we can fight them? He nodded slowly. You can. You just need to learn how. She looked uncertain. But how can we learn something we've forgotten for so long? Elias smiled faintly. You've got brains, technology, and discipline. I've got experience. Between us, we'll make it work. Over the next days, Elias began to study Valari technology. Their energy systems were advanced beyond anything he had seen. Perfect, clean, efficient. But they had no weapons, no defenses meant for war. He shook his head. You built paradise, and forgot how to protect it. Lysera watched as he examined the old archives, searching for anything useful. He found designs for ancient energy shields, long abandoned because the Valari no longer needed them. These could work, he said, pointing to a holographic display. You've got the power sources. We just need to adapt them. Lysera nodded eagerly. We can try. They worked together, combining human creativity with Valari precision. Lysera was amazed at how fast Elias thought, improvising with broken parts, turning harmless tools into defense systems. You humans are strange, she said one evening, watching him weld a metal plate. You see danger and start building instead of hiding. Elias chuckled. We didn't have much choice. Survive or disappear, that was the rule. Lysera tilted her head. Maybe that is why your species lasted so long. Maybe, he said softly. Or maybe we just hated giving up. A week later, the first defense field was ready. Elias stood in the training grounds with a small group of curious Valari volunteers. They watched him with glowing eyes as he explained simple formations and tactics. Rule 1, he said, pacing before them. You can't think like machines. You have to think like survivors. Adapt, move, protect each other. The Valari found it hard to understand at first. They were used to precision, not chaos. But Elias was patient. He showed them how to move together, how to cover one another, how to fight as a team. Lysera watched from the side, impressed. His voice carried command, calm but powerful. Even the most logical Valari listened closely when he spoke. After hours of training, Elias wiped sweat from his brow. You're learning fast. Keep this up, and those drones won't know what hit them. One of the Valari soldiers, glowing with pride, asked, Captain Kane, do you truly believe we can win? Elias smiled. If you fight like you believe you can, then yes, absolutely. That night, as the new defenders rested, Lysera and Elias stood by the energy field overlooking the city. The stars were brighter than ever. You've changed them, Lysera said softly. They look at you and see something they want to become. Elias looked at her. I didn't change them. They always had it in them. They just forgot what it felt like to fight for something worth saving. Lysera looked down at her glowing hands. Maybe I forgot too, he smiled gently. You didn't. You were the one who found me. You believed when everyone else laughed. Lysera's light shimmered warmly. I believed because something in me said the stories were true. That humanity was more than legend. Elias looked at the horizon. Let's hope your belief pays off. The next morning, alarms echoed through the city, sharp and urgent. Lysera ran to the command tower with Elias beside her. On the viewing screens, massive energy signatures were approaching from orbit. Valen's voice trembled slightly. Unidentified ships entering atmosphere. They match no known design, Elias's heart pounded. That's them. Through the shimmering clouds, dark shapes began to fall, swarms of metallic creatures descending like rain. The same red light from the desert flickered within them. The city's energy shields powered up, glowing blue. But the swarm struck hard, raining plasma bolts that cracked through the barrier. Lysera turned to Elias. They're breaking through. Elias grabbed a communication unit. All units, hold your lines. Focus fire on the weak spots. Don't waste shots. The Valari defenders moved quickly, forming ranks just as he had trained them. Energy blasts lit up the sky. Elias led from the front, directing fire and giving orders with precision. The battle raged for hours. The swarm was endless. Small drones crawling across towers trying to breach the defenses. But for everyone that broke through, the Valari struck back. Elias fought beside them, wielding a makeshift plasma rifle. Despite the chaos, his movements were calm, practiced. Lysera stood at the control hub, channeling energy to the shields. "Captain Kane, the power levels are dropping." Elias shouted back, "Reroute from the outer sectors. Focus everything on the core." She followed his command. The shields flickered and then flared brighter. The drones that breached the walls were vaporized in blue light. Finally, after what felt like eternity, the swarm began to retreat. The skies cleared, leaving behind silence and smoke. When the battle ended, the city stood scarred but alive. The Valari gathered around Elias, their lights glowing with new pride. Valen approached him slowly. "You have done what none of us thought possible, human. You led us through the storm." Elias looked around at the shining beings, tired but proud. "You did it yourselves. I just reminded you how." Lysera stepped beside him, her voice filled with quiet awe. "The myths were true. Humanity fought not for conquest, but for survival, and that spirit lives on. In us," Elias nodded. "Good, because this was only the first wave." Lysera looked at him sharply. "You mean there will be more?" He gazed up at the stars, his expression grim. "Always, the swarm doesn't stop. But now we're ready." Lysera's light glowed brighter. "Then let them come." And as the wind swept across the shining city, the legend of the human warrior spread across Erindra. For the first time in centuries, the Valari no longer whispered about myths. They stood beside one. The morning sky of Erindra burned with strange colors. The air shimmered as dark shapes filled the horizon. The Jakor had come. A storm of black ships that swallowed light and sound wherever they passed. From the tallest towers of the Valari capital, Lysera watched in silence. Her crystal skin reflected the fires in the distance. The enemy's arrival was like a shadow moving across the heart of her world. For thousands of years, the Valari had avoided war. They believed battle was for the primitive species of the old stars, not for them. But now that belief was breaking like glass under pressure. Elias Kane stood beside her, dressed in rough metal armor built from the ruins of his old ship. It was not perfect, but it was something familiar, something human. His eyes, sharp and tired, scanned the sky with calm focus. "They are testing your defenses," he said quietly. "When they find the weak point, they'll strike with everything." Lysera turned toward him, her voice trembling. "Then how do we stop them? Our energy shields mean nothing to them. We cannot even touch them without losing power." Elias adjusted the strap of his weapon, an old kinetic rifle he had rebuilt using scraps. "We stop them the human way," he said. "We fight smart. We fight together, and we don't run." Lysera looked at him, amazed by his steady tone. To the Valari, retreat was survival. To this human, retreat was unthinkable. The Valari army gathered near the outer gates of the city. Thousands of glowing figures stood in formation, their crystal bodies shining like blue fire under the sun. But behind that glow, Elias saw fear. They were beautiful, but they were not ready. He climbed onto a platform so they could all see him. Lysera stood beside him, translating his words in a voice that carried across the field. "You have been told humans are myths," he began. "Stories from a forgotten past. But I am human, and I'm here to tell you, myths don't win wars. People do." A ripple of energy moved through the crowd. The Valari listened, their bright eyes fixed on the small figure before them. "You think the Jakor can't be beaten because they are powerful. I've seen enemies like them before, and stronger, faster, endless. But they all made the same mistake." Lysera asked softly, "What mistake?" "They thought fear was stronger than hope," Elias said. "They thought courage could be destroyed. They were wrong." The crowd began to glow brighter, not with energy, but with something deeper. Emotion. Elias raised his weapon. "We fight not because we want to. We fight because we must. For your home, your people, and for the chance to live free. Today we make the Jakor remember what it means to face a warrior of soul." Lysera felt her heart surge. She could almost see the memory of those ancient Terran battles through his words. When the attack came, it came fast. The sky broke open as the first wave of Jakor ships descended. The creatures were unlike anything the Valari had ever faced. Insect-like machines that glowed with dark energy. They fired beams that tore through walls and turned stone into dust. Elias ran to the front lines, shouting orders. He had taught the Valari small unit tactics and cover, timing, and cooperation. Their glowing weapons now fired pulses of light guided by human coordination. For the first time, the Valari fought not as individuals but as a team. Lysera joined him, her crystal blade humming with energy. Together, they led a squad of Valari defenders through the shattered streets. Every corner was filled with danger, crumbling towers, falling debris, and the echo of alien roars. "Push them back to the bridge," Elias shouted. "We can trap them there." The Valari obeyed. Their movements were awkward at first, but soon they adapted. The tactics worked. The swarm began to slow. Lysera covered Elias as he set up explosive charges along the bridge. His hands moved with precision even as beams of energy flashed around them. "Why risk yourself like this?" she asked as she deflected a blast. Elias smiled faintly. "Because someone has to do it first. Others follow when they see one person stand their ground." The battle raged for hours. The air was thick with smoke and light. The ground trembled with explosions. Elias's voice echoed through the comms, calm and steady even as the fight grew desperate. Then the enemy's second wave arrived. Massive war beasts, armored and covered in shadow. Their energy blasts ripped through the Valari ranks. Fear began to return. Lysera saw the panic spreading. She looked for Elias and found him pinned under debris trying to free himself. Without hesitation, she rushed to help him. Together, they pushed the rubble aside. His arm was bleeding, but he refused to stop. "We can't hold the line much longer," she cried. Elias gritted his teeth. "Then we don't hold. We move forward." He picked up his rifle and charged toward the largest beast. The Valari stared in disbelief. A single human running straight at the monster that had crushed their warriors. "Cover him," Lysera shouted. The Valari opened fire, beams of energy lighting the air. Elias jumped onto the beast's back, climbing its rough armor. He planted one of his last explosives deep into a glowing crack. As he jumped down, the explosion tore the creature apart. The shockwave knocked him to the ground, but the line held. The Valari erupted in cheers. They had seen courage with their own eyes, something stronger than fear. The fighting continued until the twin suns of Erindra began to set. The battlefield was covered with ruins and broken machines. The Valari had lost many, but the Jacor were retreating. Elias limped toward Lysera, who stood among her surviving warriors. Her crystal armor was cracked, but her eyes glowed bright with determination. "You did it," she said softly. "You turned fear into fire." Elias shook his head. "No, you did. I only showed you what you already had inside." A low hum filled the air, the sound of enemy engines withdrawing into the night sky. The first day of the war was over, but everyone knew it was only the beginning. Lysera looked up at the stars. "Will they come back?" "They always do," Elias said. "But next time they'll face more than energy and light. They'll face warriors." That night, around the fires of the camp, the Valari told stories of what they had seen. They spoke of the small human who stood against an army. They spoke of courage not as a legend, but as something real. Lysera sat beside Elias, watching the stars. "When I was young," she said quietly, "I thought humans were just myths. I thought stories about your kind were made to teach us about bravery we could never have." Elias looked up at the sky, his voice tired but warm. "Maybe that's why I'm here. To remind you that courage isn't a human thing. It's a living thing." Lysera nodded. "Still, it began with you. With your people," he smiled faintly. "Maybe. But it continues with yours." The next morning, the Valari army prepared again. Their weapons were repaired, their formation stronger. They had lost much, but gained something more powerful: belief. From that day, the Valari no longer saw humans as ancient myths. They called Elias Kane the Spark of Soul, a name that would be remembered for generations. And though Elias knew the war was far from over, he also knew something had changed forever. The Valari had learned what it meant to fight like humans, with heart, with unity, and with hope that never dies. As he stood on the balcony of the command tower, watching the sun rise over the broken city, Elias whispered to himself. "One battle at a time." Lysera joined him, her crystal skin glowing softly in the dawn. "One battle at a time," she repeated, smiling. Together they looked toward the horizon where the stars still burned, bright, endless, and waiting. The morning after the battle, Erindra was quiet, almost too quiet. The city's streets were scarred, the towers shattered in places, and the hum of the energy shields was weak but steady. Dust hung in the air, glittering faintly under the twin suns. Lysera walked through the streets alongside Elias Kane. For the first time, she could see the aftermath of war not as a distant story, but as a living memory. The Valari had lost many brave souls, yet the surviving defenders walked with new confidence, their glowing bodies steady and proud. Elias paused to examine a shattered wall. He ran a hand across the surface, feeling the heat of melted crystal. "They hit hard," he said softly. "Too hard to let your people forget quickly?" Lysera nodded. "And yet they survived. Because of you," Elias shook his head. "No, because of them. I only reminded them what they already had inside." The council of scholars gathered in the central tower. Phelan, his light flickering with emotion, addressed the room. "The Jakor retreated, but we know they will return. Our defenses alone cannot stop them, and yet under the guidance of this human warrior, our people have learned courage, strategy, and unity." He turned toward Elias. "You have given our civilization something more than survival. You have given us hope." Elias lowered his head in respect. "Hope is earned, not given. You all fought. I only showed you that fighting together can work." Lysera's eyes glowed brighter. She stepped forward. "Captain Kane, I have studied your people. I have seen their courage, their will to survive, and their unbroken spirit. Now I see it reflected in my people." Elias smiled faintly. "Then the spark of soul has passed from one generation to another." As days turned into weeks, Elias trained the Valari in human tactics. They learned to coordinate attacks, to defend one another, and to improvise when plans failed. He introduced ideas they had never considered: quick ambushes, coordinated strikes, and using terrain to their advantage. Lysera often stood beside him, learning from his methods. Though she was a scholar, she became a warrior in her own right, leading squads into training exercises and guiding them through human-style drills. "Humans fight with their hearts as much as with their weapons," Elias said during one session. "You need to feel what you're protecting. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how advanced your tech is." Lysera thought about that carefully. She realized that humans had something the Valari rarely embraced: emotion as strength. Then came the warning signals. From the edge of the atmosphere, more Jakor ships approached, larger and faster than before. The sky darkened with their arrival. The city's energy shields glowed with all their strength, and Valari squads moved into formation. Lysera stood beside Elias at the command platform, scanning the skies for weak points. "They're coming in waves," she said. "The first group has already reached the outer city walls." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. "Then we hit them with everything we've got. Timing is everything. Remember, fight for each other, not just for survival." The Valari defenders surged forward. Their weapons glowed with power as they fired coordinated blasts at the advancing swarm. Elias moved through the ranks, shouting orders and offering encouragement. Even the smallest Valari, who had never touched a weapon before, now fought with courage. Lysera watched in awe. "They've changed," she whispered. "They're no longer afraid. They're human now," Elias replied softly. The battle reached its peak at the central plaza. Massive Jakor beasts advanced, their dark energy tearing through the outer defenses. Valari shields flickered and cracked under the relentless attack. Elias leapt forward, leading a small strike team to intercept the largest creatures. His movements were swift, precise, and fearless. Every action inspired the Valari around him. Lysera fought at his side, her blade cutting through the enemies with a mix of speed and controlled force. Together they coordinated attacks, destroying the largest Jakor beasts and pushing the swarm back. At one point, a massive enemy machine lunged toward Lysera. Elias threw himself in front of her, taking the blast against his armor. Sparks flew and he was knocked to the ground. Lysera rushed to him, using her energy to shield them both from further attacks. "You've saved me more times than I can count," she said, her voice shaking. He smiled faintly, his voice strong despite the pain. "Then it's your turn to save the world now." By midday, the swarm had begun to retreat. The surviving Jakor ships fled into the darkness of space. The city was battered, but it had stood. The Valari had learned that they could fight and win. Lysera knelt beside Elias as he leaned against a wall, exhausted and wounded. You risked everything, she said softly. Why? Elias looked at her, a faint smile on his face. Because someone has to stand. Someone has to be the first. Humans do that. We don't wait for others to act. We act, and hope others will follow. Lysera's crystal glow brightened with emotion. She realized that what she had once thought of as myth was now reality. Courage, determination, and selfless bravery were not stories. They were human. In the following weeks, the Valari rebuilt their defenses. Every day, Elias trained, fought, and guided them. Slowly, the legend of the human warrior spread across the planet. Even those who had doubted humans began to speak of Elias Kane, the living myth, the spark that reminded Arindra that courage was stronger than fear. Lysera recorded every word, every action, every battle. She knew these records would be remembered for millennia. One evening, as they watched the twin suns set over the horizon, Lysera asked quietly, "Do you miss your world?" Elias looked out at the glowing city, a soft smile on his lips. "I miss it, yes. But I've found a new one to protect. And that matters more than anything." Lysera turned to him, her voice filled with admiration. "You've changed everything. Our people, our understanding of courage." "Everything," he shook his head. "No, you changed yourselves. I just reminded you of what you always had inside." Time passed and Arindra became stronger. The Valari learned human tactics, adapted them to their energy weapons, and embraced courage as a vital strength. They were no longer a peaceful species afraid of conflict. They were warriors, strong, united, and brave. Lysera often stood with Elias on the highest tower looking out at the stars. "The Jakor may return," she said quietly. "They will," Elias replied. "But now we are ready. And if they come back, they will face more than light and crystal. They will face hearts that do not fear death and minds that refuse to surrender." Lysera smiled faintly. "And to think, I thought humans were only stories." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes firm and steady. "Stories inspire, yes. But courage? Courage is real. It is something you can pass from one generation to the next, and now it lives in you." Years later, long after the first battle, Lysera recorded the final words in the Chronicles of Arindra. "When hope fades, remember, somewhere a human once stood against the impossible and won. Not because he was stronger, not because he was immortal, but because he refused to give up. And that spark, that courage, can never die." The Valari no longer spoke of humans as myths. They spoke of them as heroes, beings of flesh and spirit whose bravery could light entire worlds. Elias Kane, the last of the Terran warriors, had awakened more than a species. He had awakened a belief that courage, hope, and selfless action could conquer the darkness of any universe. And as the twin suns of Arindra shone upon the shining city, Lysera knew the truth. The human spirit was no legend. It was real. It was alive, and it would never die.